Hi everyone, welcome to Expert Views on ADR Ever Video Podcast Show, a podcast about simplifying the traditional African method of settling disputes or the appropriate dispute resolution ADR in a bid to attract more users to settle their disputes with mediation, arbitration, collaborative law, negotiation, conciliation, early dispute resolution, restorative justice, adjudication, and of course, early neutral evaluation. This week, I'm sitting with Alec Chapa, and we are starting this series on housing disputes. So I'm just going to let Alec to introduce himself. I think I don't need to share this since he's going to do the introduction. Himself. So welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for the welcoming, and I'm excited to be here. A little bit about me is I'm a long-term care ombudsman, so I was trained in the more advocate kind of ombuds, and I'm also familiar with organizational ombuds, although I've never held that role as a full-time position, but I have been the Ombuds Committee co-chair for the American Bar Association. So I'm very familiar with all the different kinds of ombuds. And again, my particular training is in the long-term care for elderly folks living in, often with disabilities. And then I was a former conciliator for the Department of Justice under their Community Relations Service. So that's the mediation component for the Department of Justice. Does not investigate. It is a voluntary, free resource for resolving disputes at scale between groups. And nowadays, I have my private consulting practice, Mosaic Collaborative Consulting. We offer a number of different services, all neutral and capacity building. And then, of course, our flagship program is HousingShield. So rapid response dispute resolution for providers, residents, and roommates and neighbors.
Right. So I'm gonna talk about myself, just a summary about who I am. So I'm the host of Expert Views on ADR, and this is a podcast that analyzes the development, the growth about ADR across the globe, in different jurisdictions, and I've of course interviewed so many scholars and professionals in ADR and also law sector as well. Okay, I am also a mediator and a lawyer, and I am currently teaching at Kingston University, London. I've taught at University of Brighton and University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago, and I've taught ADR as well and other law courses. I'm currently teaching law in accounting and business ethics at Kingston University, London. So that's a bit about myself. And I'm Alec. We've written an article, right, Alec? Via the American Bar Association Just Resolution, we wrote on housing disputes, right? Yeah, so we sort of we're starting this new series on housing disputes as well. We've touched on it previously in our article, and I also interviewed Alec on housing as well, and eviction mediation. And we are sort of looking at housing disputes in the US across the globe, sort of diving deeper into this aspect of housing that involves mediation, right? And so we are looking at the comparative aspects. We are looking at topics like housing discrimination, eviction mediation, and of course landlord-tenant relationships and public policy. So that's what we are sort of starting on, or we've embarked on it. We're just at the beginning of this series, and we're going to sort of invite guests that specializes in housing, in conflict resolution or disputes, and of course, people that are experts in the field, to share their views and opinions as well. And of course, I and Alec would be taking our time to discuss housing disputes, looking at comparative angles, right? Maybe US, Nigeria, Trinidad, any of the jurisdictions that we would want to speak on. We're going to sit down and discuss that, and we're going to do that and bring it on this show. So yeah, that's what we are planning to do. So Alec, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I just want to underscore the amazing background that you bring to this, right? Having taught, in all these various places, already having these expert conversations, with thought leaders across the industry. There are so many different kinds of processes, right, in the appropriate dispute resolution world. There's so many different cultures and legal landscapes across different states and countries. And so I think this show is really a perfect place for us to be discussing these topics, right? Because housing in one city, as we've talked about in some of our past conversations on podcasts, it looks very different. And the way that problems show up, even the categories of problems look very different than they look in other states. And so again, right, if that's just us comparing two different states, right, me being in San Antonio, Texas, and me having done hundreds of cases across the Bay Area of California, you can imagine how much goes into different countries, different legal landscapes, different housing landscapes. And one thing I will emphasize just on that point is I know the United Kingdom has an a kind of ombudsman program for housing, but that's very unique, right? The closest thing we have in America to that is the long-term care ombudsman. That's why I went ahead and did that training. So some of it in the long-term care is health oriented, right? These are elderly people, they're often sick. And some of it is, of course, a lot of housing. But we don't have anything that's a perfect apples to apples comparison to what the United Kingdom has. So that is a great area of discussion that we can dive into at a later point. Of course, bring in experts that have, their particular area. Maybe they don't know as much about dispute resolution, but they know a ton about housing. So we'll offer the framework so that we can make sense for the audience of their, expertise, and then vice versa, right? If we bring in experts on arbitration or negotiation, we can help explain, well, for the audience that doesn't know what a BATNA is, what is a BATNA, right? Okay, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And then break it down and really distill all these topics down to, why does it matter, right? Because ultimately we're trying to keep people secure in their housing, and we want to make sure that we're supporting the housing ecosystem, right? Because these are providers that have their own needs as well. So I'm just excited to dive into it with you. And again, I could not be more thrilled with this being the platform, because you've already done so much great work.
Oh, thank you so much, Alec. And yourself, because I know maybe later you could touch on the HousingShield, you're involved with your organization, Mosaic Collaborative. So maybe you could touch on that later. But I would also add that housing is quite a sensitive and complex area of conflict that, of course, intersects with human rights. So of course we could interview human rights and lawyers as well, because of the economic inequality and public policy associated with that as well. So you could have human rights lawyers as well, and that would touch on that aspect. And of course, the aim of the series is not only to inform the listeners of ever show, but also to encourage practitioners, everyone, policymakers, researchers, students, everyone essentially, to have a rethink on how housing disputes or conflict can be handled in more humane way, because when you see that when you have housing disputes like going through litigation, oh, it's so horrible. And when you could also speak to people that are homeless, that do not have that economic equality, they do not have money, right, to pursue their claim. You could see the state they are in, how devastated they are, depressed and all that. So it's a very sensitive topic to look at, and I'm really looking forward to it as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, and we've already built a lot of great momentum on the topic, right? We had several different conversations on Ombuds Day, which this year will be, it's always in October, early October every year, where we raise the awareness. Several conversations around housing, and at a surface level, right? Because there's so many different kinds of issues. And then, of course, the cornerstone, I think of it as the cornerstone, which is the article that we published last January on full spectrum EDR, because, and for those that are less familiar with it, there had been a number of different, in fact, the section of dispute resolution of the American Bar put out a special spring series, or magazine, I should say, on housing. And so everything was about housing, full articles. There were Harvard professors on this, amazing content, and they were posing where the limits of the programs were, where it was that development was needed, right? So for me, that was a clear call to action right as soon as I was developing HousingShield.
Yeah.
And so, it was amazing to be able to collaborate with you on essentially answering that call, right? Picking up the baton, moving the thought leadership. And I think that's a good segue for me to talk about HousingShield, because that was a lot of the where the concept was introduced publicly for the first time. And so, what HousingShield is a rapid response dispute resolution system. So we're not talking one-off services, we're talking a full-blown system. It resolves issues at the lowest level possible, like I said, between roommates, neighbors, but primarily landlords and tenants. It saves 30% or more compared to litigation, right? So if people are waiting, right, there's more discovery involved, that's more expensive, more opportunity to, just have a full-blown war, quote unquote, a war in litigation. And it does all of this while, I think most importantly, improving the residents' morale and their confidence in where they live, which ultimately produces higher occupancy rates. If people are satisfied with where they live and they're satisfied with the process of resolving any issues, they tend to stay longer. And when they do, everyone benefits, right? Because tenants don't win when they're, busy disputing over security deposits or moving fees, and same thing with providers. So that's a bit about what we do. More specifically, we help provide pre-conflict education so that we're preventing unnecessary issues. I can't tell you how many tenants I've had to educate on, well, actually, withholding rent is not legal in Texas. And that automatically will kill a dispute, because they realize, oh, wait a second, okay, bring them back into alignment with what the proper dispute resolution process is, and now we're being productive, right? Having more thoughtful conversations, more constructive conversations, more solution-oriented conversations. So we provide that education. Before they ever get to the mediation table, we're also providing a lot of conflict coaching and supporting their ability to think clearly, think about their goals, connect them with resources. This is all organizational Ombuds stuff, right? Think of helping them to think through the impacts of their decisions, navigating resources, etc. And then all of this is built before even one mediation has occurred. But of course, we are doing those mediations as well. The emphasis that I want to place, and then I'll pass it back to you, Chinwe, is, mediation, first of all, is fantastic. What I often find is that, the limits of the process are that, one, even though mediation is itself early, there's still a lot of untapped opportunity to be even earlier, even more low-level resolution. And that's where we get to the one-on-one conversations, constructive coaching, and then you get to the pre-conflict, right? So before you even have an issue, what are the things that you should probably know? Turning that into a 30-second TikTok video, right? It really works,
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing I'll say is, mediation, it does tend to have that limit, right? Of the other side can easily refuse. And we want to respect that limit, right? I'm not over here advocating for something different. It's just to say that, when that limit occurs, is mediation, is all of dispute resolution held back by that? Well, I think if we're only doing mediation, yeah, it is. But if we have other aspects of dispute resolution, then we can still enhance better process without necessarily going right to mediation. So actually, we end up getting better results in mediation because we've already done some coaching, right? We've already dispelled myths. We've already deconstructed narratives, all of these things. So again, I'm just really excited to be talking and investigating, because I'll just say really quickly, the program is in development now. So as we look at different countries, right, we're bringing the best of the best from all these places.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And another interesting aspect of this is that a lot of people, maybe people in the industry, or people into ADR, or lawyers, they are aware of ADR, and how why it's important for people to first of all go through ADR before litigation. But you could find out that the most people are still not aware they can use alternative dispute resolution. They don't even know what it is, because I started writing a new book, and I started interviewing people here in England, and I found out that a lot of people are still not aware that here in England and Wales, with the new case decision in Churchill's, and of course the amended CPR in England and Wales, that parties are now mandated to approach ADR, to settle their ADR before going to court. They don't even know where what ADR is. So I think this series is really important to educate and disseminate the importance and benefits associated with ADR, particularly in housing disputes or in conflict as well. And I also wanted to find out what what the law is in Texas at the moment. Is it mandatory to settle via ADR, or do you have to go to court, or it's not compulsory?
That's a really good question. Let me offer a 30-second snapshot. So oftentimes judges will mandate as a condition precedent, go to mediation first. You cannot proceed to even have a trial date unless you do that first. And then if it doesn't settle, then you go on. Contracts also will mandate arbitration and other proceedings, oftentimes arbitration or mediation, then arbitration. And so there's a number of different ways, but very often folks do still litigate, and then whether voluntarily or by judge's order, get deferred to some process outside of court.
Oh, all right. Thank you so very much for that.
Yeah. And
What a
one thing I wanted to just kind of leave us with as a sign of, what's to come and some excitement here is I agree with you. Not enough people know about alternative dispute resolution, the appropriate types of dispute resolution for their situation. And way that I'm excited to help change that with you on this show and in other places is by not only talking about it, but by bringing these processes right to where, we can find virtually at least half the population, which is right in their housing rentals. So I think if we make it fast, easy, and simple for virtually every tenant and provider to know what housing, not just HousingShield, but to know what ADR is and to actually experience the difference that it makes, then I think that's a recipe for bringing ADR everywhere into family issues, into workplace, because you have a machine of putting people through, hey, there's a better way, and we've shown it to you.
Yeah, that's true. And I also want to add that, the listeners also have their own work to do by sharing the video, especially the series, because we're going to highlight on what kick off with what ADR is, the processes involved, and of course deal with housing disputes, looking at different jurisdictions and when we've decided which are the jurisdictions, but it's going to be England and US, at first, then we could, go into other jurisdictions as well. So yeah, I think our listeners, please share the series, enlighten other people, so that people out there would be able to settle their disputes quicker, faster, and of course retain their relationship. So yeah, thank you so very much, Alec, for agreeing to collaborate with me in this series. I'm really, really grateful.
Absolutely, me too. Look us up online, like, share, follow Eva Podcast, HousingShieldTX.com, and we look forward to sharing more knowledge with you guys. Thank you, Chinwe, for the collaboration.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, Alex. Speak to you later. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.